All right, so the past several days we talked about the pyramids and how the pyramids were originally built as burial tombs for the pharaohs. Well, what made the pharaoh so important? Obviously, the pharaoh was considered to be this very special, godlike king. They were the most important part of their culture. Not only was their pharaoh considered to be that king, but they thought he was a living relative to the gods. So because of that, they thought that not only should the pharaoh be obeyed, but they needed to be worshipped as well. So the pharaoh did all the duties that a king would. He controlled the army, he was the head judge, he was in charge of all the commerce or the money and trading, but he's also going to be the head religious figure. So pretty much whatever the pharaoh says is going to go. Now there were two main gods that they believed the pharaohs were related to. It was Re and Horus. So you're going to see Re down here at number 5. I have it spelled R-E. Sometimes you're going to see it spelled R-A. Both spellings are okay. And sometimes you'll hear different pronunciations. Sometimes it's pronounced Re, sometimes it's pronounced Ra. It really just depends on what your source is. Back when we used to have a textbook, they would spell it both ways in your textbook. Back when we used to have the air test, they would use both spellings of Re. So I just want you to kind of be familiar with both. You'll see R-E and R-A. They're talking about the same God. Okay, but he was considered to be the sun god, and during different points in Egypt's history, that was the most important god. Horus was the sky god, and I'll show you drawings of both of these guys later on. But those are the two gods that they believe the pharaoh was related to.
Sure. The pharaohs were the kings and queens of ancient
Alright, so this one's going to be for number 7 on your guys' study guide. You're just going to write what is in the yellow here. Well, obviously in the brain pop they mentioned King Tut or King Tutankhamun. Now this is the pharaoh that, if I were to go around to school and ask all the adults, hey, name one Egyptian pharaoh, I'll bet you 95% of them can only tell us this guy. Probably the only one that people can name. Now, you heard in the brain pop that really the main reason for that is because of his tomb. His tomb is one of the very few that, when it was discovered, still had some artifacts in it. The big difference with his tomb, though, is that his still had a lot of artifacts in it. It was nearly untouched from when he was buried until that discovery of it in 1922. So a lot of what we know about the ancient Egyptians and their pharaohs comes from what we've discovered in his tomb. Now, when he was alive, he really wasn't all that of an important pharaoh. Didn't win any major battles or gain any new land, build any great monuments or anything like that. But he's the most well known because we know the most about him and his life, and because his tomb was mostly unrobbed when it was discovered. Alright, so we already mentioned here that he became pharaoh at the age of 9, which does seem insanely young. Remember, we've talked about life expectancy here before, where most people maybe only live to low to mid 30s at this point in time. So when he does take over at 9 years old, he's not completely in charge. He still has other people helping to advise him on what to do. But he's only going to live for about 10 years after the age of 9. He dies about the age of 19 from causes we're not really sure of. We'll get into that here in a second. But here is the area where he is buried. It's called Valley of the Kings. And we've heard about how much effort it takes to build a pyramid. There's a ton of stone. It takes somewhere between 20 and 30 years. It takes a lot of manpower to build it. Well, eventually the Egyptians are going to figure out that, man, that's a lot of work for one person. So they start to bury their tombs underground and start digging down into the ground. We saw that in the video the other day with Hatshepsut's tomb. So this is the outside of King Tut's tomb. Now, when it was discovered, it wasn't all dug out like it is here. Okay, it was under sand and rock, and they had to dig down into it. But here's kind of a little diagram drawing of how it sits under the ground. So there was a staircase that leads down, another passageway, and then 4 different rooms here. And then this was the staircase that actually led down. Now, the guy who discovers it, you heard it in the video, the guy's name was Howard Carter. He had been digging in this area for a while, and they discovered this tomb purely on accident. When they were digging in this area, they were removing rock and stone from around this staircase when someone found a set of stairs. They weren't particularly looking for the staircase in this area. Like we said, it was just kind of dumb luck. So they start digging out the staircase and eventually lead to this sealed door. Okay, so this is another diagram of how it's all laid out underground. Yeah, there is a lot of sealed doors. I'll show you one here in a second. But the main sealed door that they get to first looks like this. Now with this sealed door, it's essentially doors that have been tied together. You can see the rope here in the middle. And then there was clay over the knots. They'd take a lump of clay cover the knots with it, and then stamp it. You can kind of see the little emblem here in the stamp. So that the only way you could open this door would be to either cut the rope or break this clay seal. Either way, you're going to be able to tell that someone was in there. So when it's discovered, they see that the clay is missing from this end. So they think that someone may have been in here at one point, but for whatever reason, most of the things that were in here are still there. So one more diagram of that. You're going to see this stuff here in just a couple minutes. So if you look around the room, I believe this is the first room I show you, right here. And then you have his actual burial chamber, you'll see that. I think this is the third room I show you. You'll be able to tell with all the different wheels and things here in the corner. You'll see a spot where there's two guards over here on the wall. And then this annex room. In this picture, it looks like there's just a bunch of, well, it looks like junk thrown in a corner. That's pretty much how it looks in real life. So the pictures I'm going to show you here, they are in color. Some of them are in color, some of them are in black and white. Obviously, when these pictures were taken in 1922, they wouldn't have been in color. They've been kind of retouched and stuff. All right, so this is another one of those sealed sections. This guy standing right here, that's Howard Carter. That's the man who was credited with discovering the tomb. What they're doing here, they're kind of poking through this sealed off wall to kind of see, they don't want to just smash through it because they don't want to damage something that might be on the other side. But the story goes that once they get through here, he pretty much holds a candle through it to see what he can see. One of the employees, hey, well, what's behind there? His words are marvelous, marvelous things or something like that. So he's able to kind of see the different artifacts and things that are on the other side of the wall. So if you remember the room I showed you where it had the two little guards on either side, if you look closely, you can kind of see where the wall's a different color right there. Now keep in mind, obviously this is a color photo. It's nice and bright in this photo. But back in 1922, this would have been a pitch black room. You would have had a lantern to kind of light it for you. So the fact that there's a different color here would have been hard to tell, would have been hard to see. But they did this so that if someone were to break into this room, they would think it was one solid room and wouldn't think to go through this wall into another area. Okay, it was kind of meant to trick anyone who may have broken in. They go inside, they take whatever's in here, and they think, well, this is it, there's nothing else here, and they would leave. Okay, but this is going to lead to his actual burial chamber. And we'll look at the other artifacts and stuff that are in this room in just a second.